So you want to film some weddings, but you don't have a team, you're by yourself, and especially ceremonies needing 14 different angles because you're all by yourself. So today, let's go over how to shoot and film or set up for a wedding ceremony by yourself. One person, multiple cameras, etc. And we'll go over kind of at least one wedding that I did recently, and then we'll kind of revisit this as I get more and more content so we can go really in depth on how to film a ceremony solo. So to preface or to start, realistically, you're gonna need at least 2 extra cameras on top of your main camera, preferably 3. More than 3, you're doing extra credit, and that's totally fine as well. But when you are filming a wedding ceremony, you need multiple angles because it's almost a guarantee that at least one angle at one point in time is not going to work perfectly. So you're going to have to, have that other angle to make up for the other one not working. A majority of the time, the photographer or even yourself are going to get in your shot, or other guests will walk in front of it or stand in front of it, and you're going to need a backup to fix this problem. So to start, you're gonna need multiple cameras, you're gonna want multiple pieces of audio equipment, and etc. So the more equipment, the better, and I hate saying that because it sucks to say like go spend a bunch of money, because by the time you spend all this money on gear, you could just get a second shooter and it might make your life easier. But you're still gonna need those angles to record a full ceremony unless you're not going to edit a full ceremony video, which is a pretty common thing that people book in a wedding package, is the full ceremony. So to start, you are going to go to your ceremony and you're gonna set everything up, and then we'll kind of go into some behind the scenes footage I captured with a 360 cam at my most recent wedding, and then I'll kind of butt in here and there as I need to, but for the most part, I did have a mic on during the day and I got you guys some good bits, some good audio, so we'll just go through that and then I'll stop here and there to add more and more info. Normally, with a solo wedding, you want at least 2 to 3 cameras, each with a mic, because you never know, just to have all your bases covered in case someone goes in front of your angle, which is going to happen most likely. And since it's outside today, on a sunny day, I'm gonna set my camera most likely to our shutter priority mode. That way I can keep the shutter the same and the aperture can change as needed in case a cloud goes over. And that way you're not in a pickle if it gets too dark or too bright, because you're only one person and you can't man all of your cameras at the same time. So this is the next best option to capture everything you need. So to kind of go off of this point as well, this is a really important thing I learned over time, is you're gonna have to rely on some auto settings when you are at a wedding filming with multiple camera angles at a ceremony. The exposure can easily change of every camera that you're on if you're on manual settings, unless you're on like a really high-end cinema camera that shoots raw and you can change settings after the fact, which I'm not. I'm on DSLR, mirrorless cameras, etc. If a cloud comes over after you've already set your settings, it's gonna get darker, or vice versa. If it goes away, it's gonna get brighter. So what I do is I use shutter priority, which essentially keeps your shutter speed the same because you're going to need your shutter to stay considering whatever your frame rate is. For ISO, I just keep it at whatever it needs to be. Mine's usually 400 for Canon C-Log for native ISO, and then the aperture can change as it needs. But what I also do is I brighten the image up more than it needs to be to force my aperture up a little bit. So normally my lowest aperture is 2.8. So I'll brighten the image a little bit on purpose using different settings in order for the auto aperture to move itself up to maybe f4.5 or something around that. I don't really know what it is because it doesn't tell me. That way, if it happens to get darker, it can still have some room to get darker, but also if it needs to get lighter, it can drop that aperture down to that 2.8 at the lowest to, compensate for the change in scenery. And I usually set mine to bracket about -1/3 just to account for some brightness. So this camera's on a 7200. My other camera will probably be on an 85. And I will put them in two different areas. One of them being a main angle so that it's probably the best one to use, but it's most likely out of the way of the photographer because you're most likely gonna get a photographer that goes in the middle of the aisle the entire time, most likely on a 35. But this is a little bit of a different setup because we don't have a center aisle. So it actually is kind of nice to have what we have here. DJ?
Yes, sir.
I'm James, I'm doing video. How's it going?
Nice to meet you.
Are you using mic for the ceremony or just the reception?
There is a microphone for the ceremony.
Okay.
Both the groom and the officiant will be mic'd.
Okay.
So if you want to record anything,
Yeah, I usually mic up the groom as well.
that's fine.
We'll just double mic him, I guess.
You can. I have a headphone out here that you can plug into.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you happen to have XLR out or just the headphone?
I have the XLR out on the speaker.
Okay, that'd probably be better. I've had bad experiences with phones out in the past, probably just because there's an external volume button that sometimes gets messed with.
I always make sure that that's good.
Yeah, I mean, we can try that. That's totally
Whatever
fine.
makes you feel comfortable.
Whatever you think will be better on your setup. I know everyone's different, so.
I know the headphones you get stereo.
Okay. Yeah, that might be better then. Yeah, we'll try that out. We'll just, yeah, I never know. Sometimes.
Yeah, I'll make sure that, and we'll test it before.
Okay.
Like on your, I don't know if you have a Zoom or whatever.
Yeah, I just have a little Sony one.
Okay.
I don't have a.
And we'll test the gains on it once I get everything.
Okay. Yeah, it's got an auto leveling feature, so sometimes hard to tell if the gain is actually good or if it's just forcing itself to go down.
Yeah.
So, cool. Yeah, I've got the cable and everything, so. High as we can go. Benefits of having a tall tripod if you're doing solo is so you can get over the people. All right, and then our other camera will probably go on the opposite to the aisle, which is where I am now, just so it's not in the way when they come down the aisle. However, this is a much better angle, unfortunately, because of the way that the altar portion is angled. I could put it on a wider lens and put it closer. I think the wider lens is gonna be the better play here. And the reason I'm not picking the aisle that I'm in here right now is because the angle that it sits at is a little bit crooked, and I feel like you would barely be able to see one of their faces. And that would be kind of annoying and a hard angle to use with editing. So we're gonna sacrifice the camera partially being in the way for having the better angle. And we'll probably just put it out of the way until after she walked down the aisle and then deal with it after. And what I'll usually do after that they're all up there on the altar is I'll go check both my cameras, if not all three, if I have three, and make sure that the angles are good and change anything that may need to be changed during that time. And I did actually end up finding a good spot to where it won't be in the way when they come down the aisle. So that should actually be pretty nice. And that's pretty much the whole setup. Usually I have 3 cameras, and I'm only using 2 today. To go over the whole setup here, I've got 1 camera here set up facing the altar almost directly, which is nice. Another one on the other side with a very similar angle. Now that I'm thinking about it, it almost is too similar. So I might move the other one over to the left a little bit further. But this one's got a mic on it just for redundancy. It's got an ND filter, and then I'm on aperture priority just in case the sun changes the aperture or the exposure. And so I can not have to come back over here every 5 seconds to check on it, and it'll be all good to go. And then I'll show you the other camera here, which I'll probably move just a little bit, and that'll be the setup. Another ND filter just with a matte box. And then of course this is a very zoomed in angle, and the other one will be more zoomed out. So it might not even hurt to leave it where it was, because you'll have almost a cut in or cut out angle. And then we'll adjust it once they actually get up there. But that should be good for the entrance. And just keep in mind, 89% of the time you're going to have people standing up in your way when she comes down the aisle. And those two cameras you have are probably not going to capture any of that, because there's not really a tripod tall enough. And I guess you could buy a 7-foot tripod, but I usually just use my gimbal camera here to capture that portion, which you'll see here in a little bit. Alrighty. I was hoping that your mic had an output, but that's only for instrument, right? Yeah, all good. Because that's all I need. I don't need the music, so.
Oh yeah.
But it's okay. It'll work either way.
Yeah. There you go. You can plug in there.
Yeah, it looks like we're fine. What level's that at right now for the whatever's playing?
It's right here.
Like a 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we put the phones at like a little bit higher than that, we should be pretty good then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, because they're gonna be probably talking louder than this.
Yeah.
You think? Okay, maybe just leave it where it was then.
Okay.
That should be fine. I'd rather have it too low than too high, because you know, at least it's not peaking. So, and we're probably starting a little bit late today, I assume. So. And then the schedule was a little bit behind, and they were pushing really hard to like get things started. So they started walking down the aisle like instantly. I can set my gimbal down if needed, like I did here, and then it stays recording on the people walking down the aisle. And then I can also go start my cameras or fix the camera angles, etc., while this is all going down. Once I get all my cameras set up and going, we're totally fine, and we get everybody else coming down the aisle. And everything else went pretty smoothly. I just kind of walk around the whole ceremony, getting different types of shots and angles, etc. when I'm, the ceremony's happening. Every now and again, I do go and check on both of my cameras, or if not all 3, if I have 3, to make sure that they're in focus, that they're recording, that the shot is good, the angle is good. You fix any minor things that need to be fixed. And the more often that you check them, the better, because I would rather spend the extra couple of seconds checking my camera angles than having to try to deal with not having an extra camera angle in post because it was, compromised in some way or another, which is super unfortunate and has happened in the past, but it is something you have to deal with. So if there's 3 main takeaways, it's have at least 3 cameras, have mics on everything, and make sure you're checking your angles, here and there to ensure that they are good to go. If you can do all 3 of those things, you can definitely film a ceremony solo. It is a pain in the butt, and I do, recommend having a second shooter, but I know when you are at a certain price point, or if you do business in a similar way as myself, which is changing here soon, you may not have a team. And during that time, it can be kind of annoying to do solo ceremonies. So that's it for today's video. I hope this maybe helped you a little bit. We'll definitely revisit this topic in the future to go over more in detail. But that's really it for today, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.